Hi, Minister. Happy New Year to you.
Returns.
It's great to see this getting the focus it has, and I think you and your officials are to be congratulated more generally for making a lot of information available across the public sector on the websites, and I know the plan is to continue that. I think it's fantastic to see. There's a few points I'd just like to raise for your consideration as you move from the heads to the draft bill. The first is the bodies included. I think it's fantastic that the exclusions, that some of the bodies are coming in. NAMA is one that has been discussed at this committee many times, and it's, to my mind, deeply unhealthy, the level of secrecy around it. And the NTMA. What I would ask you to consider, my understanding is that whilst they will now be included, there will still be a set of exemptions for them, and I think Deputy Fleming was touching on this. My view would be that the bill, maybe with the exception of security, with the guards and defence, but for everything else, certainly the likes of NAMA, the NTMA, that the bill should provide sufficient protections for any organisation. So for NAMA, for example, commercial sensitivity would already be included. So I would like to see a situation where these bodies don't get exemptions, potentially with the exception of An Garda Síochána and the Defence Forces. The second is, it's a question for you, which is on enforcement. What enforcement powers do you see the Commissioner having? Will they have the power to sanction or to fine bodies who they deem to be in non-compliance? The third, Minister, is something I just like to raise that I've seen abused. Well, I believe it's been an abuse by one or two state bodies I've tried to get information from. And it's around commercial sensitivity. For example, I had Bus Éireann refuse to give me passenger numbers. They were making some very important changes. They were extraordinarily unhelpful. And they refused to give me basic information, and they hid behind commercial sensitivity. Now, it was absolute nonsense, but they were able to hide behind it. So I'd very much appreciate it if you and your officials could look at the potential abuse of commercial sensitivity and how that could be addressed, maybe through the legislation or guidelines from the Commissioner. And then, I'll give the final one. I just would add my voice as well on fees. I mean, you don't have to respond to it again. You've made the decision. I would just like to back it up. I think there's a great opportunity here, Minister. I'm sure you're aware of the UK, where the new FOI, they maintained the no-fee structure. The only two reasons I can see are to deal with vexatious requests, which of course can come in, but actually Section 10 of the legislation already deals with that. It allows the head to say, no, I'm not answering these because they're vexatious. So that issue is already covered. And then the second is the costs. You yourself have said, obviously, it's a fraction of the real cost. Deputy MacDonald, I imagine, is suggesting that the cost, the nominal charge, probably doesn't cover the administrative cost. In the UK, they found that it does not cover the administrative cost. And to your own point, Minister, you said in your opening statement, you know, the quote was the public right to know. I would absolutely agree with that. They do have a right to know, including the media, and that there shouldn't be a cost. Now, it may be a nominal cost, and I note your €23 average, but one group of people that are, I think, incredibly important to a healthy democracy, who really do feel these, are local newspapers. They're operating, a lot of them, on a shoestring. We really do need local media to be able to get involved in, let's say, county councils, local state bodies, and so forth. And some of them, I think, would find these kind of fees quite a problem. So they're the four areas: no exemptions, enforcement powers of the Commissioner. I would fully back up a no fees regime, and then would you see if you can take a look at what I've seen as abuse of the excuse of commercial sensitivity.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Minister.
I responded to the exemptions issue, and it's something that we look at. Deputy Fleming made the point. In terms of enforcement, there are no administrative sanctions, but it's a criminal offence. We set out it's a criminal offence, so there are criminal sanctions against breaches of the Act once it is enacted. In terms of the commercial semi-state bodies, we had this debate again in the context of the Ombudsman, if you recall. I think Senator Barrett was of the view that there was no such thing as anybody being exempt from anything in terms of overview or oversight on these matters, and that's a very legitimate perspective, legitimate point of view. I, as somebody who supports the semi-state sector, and I wanted to operate on a level playing field to the non-state commercial sector, I don't think that it should be disadvantaged to the extent that its commercial decisions would be subject to an oversight or an intrusion in the public domain that would hamper its capacity to operate on a level playing field with the non-state commercial sector. But again, maybe these things, we debated it in the context of the Ombudsman Bill, we might have an opportunity to debate it here. One of the reasons that I want, and I'll be doing this, as I said, Chair, with all this type of legislation that I want to bring, is to have it here at a very early stage, so that any constructive ideas that you have, including drafting for new sections or anything else, that I will genuinely consider, because I think it's important to get this right. Because, and this is much more really the business of the Oireachtas as it is the executive. And I don't regard the executive having either proprietorial rights or certainly all wisdom in these matters. So I will genuinely be open to constructive thoughts in relation to these. We've had the debate in relation, or the open discussion in relation to the fees. I've set out what I believe. I hear what deputies are saying. Section 10 on the vexatious side, it's not regarded as actually very effective, and it's one of the things we're reviewing in any event. Because you can have people just taking a down on, I've come across it in my own 30 years of public life, on a particular, say, public servant, and everything that person does is subject to freedom of information requests, just by way of almost torment. And that can go on for weeks or months or years, as I've seen in individual cases. So we need to have balance in all of this, and I'm willing, as I said, in an open way to see what is the right balance to be struck, and I genuinely will be approaching this and the other types of legislation like whistleblowers and so on as really an important one for us to build a consensus across the House on.